everybody. My name is Philippe TAFFIN. I'm currently the Chief Investment Officer of AVIVA France and also co-pilot of the Impact Taskforce launched by Olivier Grégoire under the Finance for Tomorrow. So thank you to be here and to have waited a little bit for this first roundtable. So of course today it's a great honor and a pleasure to moderate this first roundtable around impact around the questions how to scale up and measure real impact. So as you all know, impact finance and impact investing has been growing very fast over the last years. According to the GIN figures, it represents more than 500 billion euros today. And more investors show attractive interest to invest in this type of strategies as they think that this approach is really the real one to address the big social and environmental issue we are facing now. Several initiatives have been launched recently, among which the most recent one is the G7 task force, and of course the Finance for Tomorrow task force launched a few months ago. Still, this capital only represents less than 0.5% of all this capital over the world. And so the next question is, how can we scale up? How can we improve and attract more capital towards these strategies? What type of frameworks, what tools, what methodology must be put in place in order to measure the impact of these strategies? And so in order to address and to discuss all these topics, let me introduce the outstanding speakers of this roundtable. First of all, Pauliina Murphy. Pauline, come on stage, please. Pauliina is the Engagement Director at the World Benchmarking Alliance. She leads the World Benchmarking Alliance advocacy, engagement policy, and regulatory outreach, ensuring benchmark reflects societal expectations and are relevant to the external environment they seek to change. Maha Keramane, please. Maha is the head of Positive Impact Business Accelerator at BNP Paribas. She has been very much involved in designing and structuring social impact bonds in France and outside France, in Belgium and in the US. In 2020, Maha launched with the European Investment Fund a dedicated fund to invest in impact bonds in Europe and contribute to scale the products. She also coordinates the impact investing strategy and implementation within the BNP Paribas group. Florent, Lecinq. Florent joined the SFIL in 2013 as Chief Investment Officer of this public bank in charge of the financing of the French local public sector. He's also a member of the supervisory board of the CAFFIL, which is the SFIL subsidiary and issuing entity. Nicolas Hazard, French entrepreneur who founded INCO, global organization with a mission to build a new economy, environmentally sustainable and socially responsible. He's also the founder of the Impact Square event, winner of the Montgolfier Prize, and was elected a Young Global Leader in 2015 by the World Economic Forum. Since 2020, he acts as special advisor in charge of social and solidarity economy to the European Commission. So, very happy to be with you. Let me start with you, Nicolas. My first question is for you. What is your vision of the development of impact financing in Europe? And can you also tell a little bit more about the key obstacles you are facing for developing this type of strategy?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Philippe. Actually, it's pretty emotional to be here with you today because I remember 10 years ago when I founded INCO the first time and I developed one of the first impact investing fund in Europe. I was here at the Palais Brongniart meeting with lots of people of the financial world, the Euronext and all these people. And I was talking about what impact is. And at that time, impact was not something that was on the agenda and was not something that was the priority for the future. And 10 years after, I'm so glad, because I haven't been here for almost 10 years, to see that there's impact everywhere, and this day is the impact day. So I'm pretty happy, first of all, to see this journey that has been amazing in this impact world for the last 10 years, where we came from a topic that wasn't really something in the middle of the conversation, and now really we're talking about it. There are ministers, there are lots of people, there are like the public sector, the private sector, social entrepreneurs, they're all developing and they're all growing, so I'm super happy about that. But now we have some challenges because the future, there are lots of big issues that we need to tackle: environmental issues, social issues, inequalities, global warming, and all these kind of things, demographic issues, and we need more than ever social entrepreneurs and impact companies to grow and to develop to answer these big challenges that we're facing for the next decade. And for that, I'm pretty happy to see that we're already growing, but I think we could do far more. We're only at the beginning of this journey, and there are a lot of things that need to be done to see this market grow, to see this new asset class grow, and I'm talking about impact investing and not SRI. And yes, there are some challenges. The first challenge, and we saw that this morning, first of all, we saw that this morning while we were blocked by people that really, of course, care about the planet and about the environment. And it's important because I think what we need to do is we're giving a hope in using finance to be one of the solutions to these big challenges, that we're going to face. And I think that there are stuff that are going the right direction, but there are also a lot of bullshit in this sector and in this industry, and we need to address that in measuring the impact, and I think we're going to talk about that later on. But I think it's also key to show that there are some players that are really pure players in this field that really want to change the world, that really want to do, and others sometimes that are better in marketing than in really doing stuff. And so walking the talk, I think it's very important, because there are lots of people that really count on this sector and on this industry to be changing, and we need to be a right solution, to build together the good solution and to show that they're not wrong and there's a solution. And I think that globally, having a saving account, being able to play a role in the finance sector is more efficient than your ballot when you're voting, actually. Through the money that you have, through your saving accounts, through the money that you invest, you can change the world and you can do things in a far better way, and it's even more efficient sometimes than a democratic system where you have the impression that you can vote for any of the candidates, it won't change anything. So that's really important. There's a big hope for impact investing, for this sector to grow, and we need to prove every day that people are right to invest in our product, and through the product that we're developing, we're really changing things, and we're building a new economy that is sustainable and inclusive at the same time.
Okay, now I turn to Sarah Lacoche. Are you online, Sarah? Can you hear us? Not yet.
Hello, good morning. I'm really happy to be here
Can
today,
you make me
although
a
I would
sign
have much
if
preferred to be
Sarah
with
is
you for
online?
real.
No? Okay. So Maha, so while waiting for Sarah, maybe my question for you, Maha. You are in BNP Paribas, where you are one of the most proactive and active in the field of the Contrat Impact Français, so the French social impact bond. This type of investment vehicles has been developing very fast. Can you give us some view about that and the key element, the key driver of the acceleration of this market, and what do you see also, same question than Nicolas, about the key issues which prevent to accelerating a little bit more?
Thank you, Philippe. Happy to be here too. Just a quick survey. Who knows what is a social impact bond or contrat impact? Okay, not bad. So I'll just have a quick reminder. Social impact bonds, or contrat impact social in French, is a product actually that enables the private sector to pre-finance some innovation in the social or environmental field that are bared by associations, NGOs, social entrepreneurship, who wants to experiment an innovation but do not have the funds to do so. So there is a private investor that will invest in this program. There will be an independent evaluator who will measure actually all the KPIs that are achieved and that are contractually decided by all stakeholders, and then you will have a public authority who will come and reimburse the investors, and even with a bonus if the performance of impact is achieved and it's better than what was scheduled in the beginning. So it's a win-win instrument where all the interests are aligned. It's also a very nice dialogue between parties that usually maybe don't have the opportunity to speak to each other the same language. And it's also a very interesting tool in order to go over the silos that you might have in social actions. I give you an example. We are working on an impact bond with Fondation d'Auteuil on preventing childhood placement for youngsters. And it is a subject that is multifaceted because it's multidimensional, because there are issues on housing. Sometimes children are placed because their parents do not have a home. So it's a question of housing, it's a question of employment, it's a question to access of rights, and it's a question also of how to create a specific environment to enhance the dialogue between the parents and their children. And this specific place is a place where you have all this in the same and unique. So it's very interesting so that the beneficiaries, they don't have to go here to have a housing, go there to have an employment, go there to have their access to rights. They all have it in the same place. It's a safe place for them during 1 year, and they have all these social workers working with them so that they can work on a project family. And the final KPI that we are expecting is how to avoid children placement. So this is the unique KPI. It's not about cash flows, it's not about profitability, it's about the impact KPI. So it's a very interesting tool. So this is I think one of the main things that makes it so popular today, because it's one of the few tools that addresses that. It's a tool that is concentrated on impact, it's a tool that is concentrated on innovation. And maybe the hurdles that we have today is that it's a question of pedagogy, because in the mindset it's not yet there. Should it be in the governments that need to have a budget that they foresee pluriannually? So they need to say, okay, I need to book today money that I will have to pay in 5 years. If there is a success. For investors or bankers, it's quite complicated to say, okay, what is my risk today? Because I know how to evaluate a risk on the cash flow, but I don't know how to evaluate a risk on impact, how to get a sense of what is my risk on performance of impact. So this is something also that maybe we will discuss a little bit later. And it's also maybe a lack of framework. Today we did it a little bit experimentally. We revamped the bond vehicle, but we tried to make it fit into something. And maybe today what is missing is a global framework so that the tool can scale.
Thank you, Maha, for this very precise experience and example of a French social impact bond. Now, I think that Sarah, you are with us. Thank you. So Sarah, you are the director of the finance department of the Banque des Territoires, and you are also in charge of the sustainability strategy and the extra financial evaluation. So your point of view is very interesting for us. Could you tell us about the different strategy, different axes, different dimension where the Banque des Territoires used to work in order to track public-private capital? toward impact projects?
Yeah, thanks. I'm really happy to be with you. I would have much preferred to be with you for real, but it was not possible, unfortunately. First of all, I want to say, you don't hear me? Oh.
Sorry.
You hear me now?
We do not hear you.
Because I hear you. Can you hear me now?
I'm really sorry.
Yes, you don't hear me. I don't know why.
Okay, sorry. So maybe we'll try to fix this and come back to you, Sarah. Very sorry for that.
Okay.
Florent, in SFIL, you are also very active in providing financing, especially for greening the economy. Can you present the activity and the objective of SFIL?
Yeah, thank you, Philippe. I'm happy to be here. Since 2019, SFIL has supported the transition of its clients with two specific programs. For local authorities, we have proposed green loans to finance green investments, and for public hospitals, we have also proposed social loans to finance investments hospitals. To give you a key figure, as of today, our sustainable bond outstanding has reached 4 billion, which is split into 1.3 billion of green bonds and 2.7 billion of social bonds. Our green program includes 5 eligible loans categories. Let me give you a topical example of each. The first category is territorial mobility and soft urban transport. So in this field, we finance, for example, the extension of several tramway lines in municipalities of Saint-Étienne, Nice, or Angers. The second eligible category is energy efficiency of buildings. In this area, we have financed the construction of energy-efficient school buildings in the region Occitanie. The third one concerns renewable energy. On this sector, we have financed the extension of a geothermal network in Seine-Saint-Denis. The fourth category is a little bit less in the spotlight, but it is a key sector in terms of sustainability. It is water management and sanitation. So in this field, we finance, for instance, a new treatment plant for the municipality of Cannes-sur-Mer. The last category relates to household waste management, and in this field, we finance the upgrading of a recycling center in Oise department, for example. So as you can see, we've got a pretty broad range of eligible investment, and those programs have been pretty well received by our clients. And in terms of difficulties, I would mention the reporting requirement by those thematic financing. Local authorities are used to financing their general funding needs with classic loans without any reporting requirement. And shifting to a green loan with a use of proceeds approach is something which requires a change of habits. Generally speaking, I think that finding the right balance between the increasing level of details within the reporting and the necessity to keep a product on an offer which is pretty simple and manageable for the client is something which is a very important topic for the full industry.
Oui, bien sûr, je vous entends toujours très bien.
I'll come back to Sarah.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Sarah,
can you hear me?
Can you hear Sarah now?
No. Can you hear me now?
Sarah, can you? Yes, I know you hear us, but
yes,
please. So my question was about all the activities developed by Banque des Territoires in the impact field. So can you give us a flavor of all what you do currently?
Yes, of course. Thanks a lot. I'm very happy to be with you today. Let me talk a little bit about Banque des Territoires. Can you hear me now or not? I don't know if you hear me.
Well, I must tell the audience that it is not the first time that I have this type of technical issues. So,
So you don't hear me?
Maybe if I can have a sign when Sarah is available. 2 minutes? Okay. So we are looking forward to hearing you, Sarah. It's, the tension is up. Good teasing. Okay, Pauliina, I know that, well, you in the World Benchmarking Alliance, you concretely try to find some frameworks. And the objective of the World Benchmarking Alliance is to try to change the behavior of the big corporate regarding their economic model and the way they impact the future and can also addressing, you know, the SDG for the next decades or 20 years. Can you present that, and can you tell us also about the key difficulties when discussing with this big corporate?
Thank you. I feel Sarah's tension, so I'll try to fill the gap. Thank you for having me here. So who is walking the walk? And how do you know? And as investors in this room, maybe you do know who is doing the right things, which companies are progressive, but the people whose money you manage, do they know what those companies are doing? These are some of the fundamental questions that the World Benchmarking Alliance has been trying to address, to really think about what is impact, and then how do you demonstrate to everybody that impact? And so the WBA, created 3 years ago, has been translating the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement for concrete actions for companies. And we take 2,000 dominant, influential companies around the world. We choose them according to their influence on sustainable outcomes. It can be positive or negative influence, I should say, but it's regardless of geography or group structure, regardless of the ownership model or whether the companies are listed or not listed, but it's about their sustainable outcomes and their impact. And for us, it's about impact of the company on people and the planet. And of course, there's lots of discussions about whether it should be about corporate value creation and about double materiality. These are all the regulatory discussions going on at the moment. But our starting point is the impact of the company on people and the planet. And that's really because the SDGs are our North Star. So we've taken that as our guiding, our guide, and that's how then we look at the companies. We put them in different transformations. We have 7, and we look at how that company is going along that transformation. So it's not just a snapshot of what's happening at the moment, but also where's the ambition of the company. So for the high emitters, the autos or the oil and gas, how they're doing on their road to 1.5 degree scenario. So we look at companies' policies, their commitments, how are they getting there, and then actions and the progress. And that's really moving the dialogue from the commitments. There's been lots and lots of companies making lots of commitments since the SDGs were launched, but there's not so much focus on who's holding them accountable for those commitments and how companies are progressing on that agenda. But I'll give you an example. I'll talk about energy and decarbonisation later. But for now, we've just published a benchmark of 350 food companies on the food and agriculture system. And it looks at the entire value chain. And so agricultural inputs, processors, food retailers, restaurants. And every single one of those companies was looked at through 45 indicators in environmental, social, nutrition, and governance pillars. So we look at the whole of the business. So if a food company is doing well on nutrition, it's also important that we know how they're treating their workers throughout the supply chain. So we try to give that holistic picture. Number 1 is Unilever, and it got 71%. The French company Danone was ranked number 3 with 63%. And the next French company, Carrefour, was ranked 20 at 43.5%. I'd love to say I'd love to celebrate the leadership. There are some amazing good practices that these companies are doing. But actually, if the leading company is only achieving 71% out of 100, we need to really consider what are the levers, what's the support that that company needs from investors, from finance, from governments, from civil society actors, to make sure that that transition is met by the 2030. I'll leave it there for now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Sarah, You're back.
Okay, do you hear me? With the sound?
Fantastic.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Okay. Excellent.
We have
So
the
I'm happy
sound,
to.
so you can now,
Good.
you have the floor.
Thank you. I'm happy to be with you, although I would have preferred to be with you for real. I'm going to talk about the Banque des Territoires and Caisse des Dépôts. So what we do, because we always try to work with public and private actors, because I think it's the way to move now. First of all, I'd like to say that the Banque des Territoires has the impact at the heart of its strategy. And it means that our investment strategy, we're ready to be a long-term investor. It means we're going to be patient, and it means that our motivation is to seek the highest possible extra financial impact on environmental, social, or governance issue, and also impact on the territories, because we want to reduce the inequalities on the territories. It means that we're going to be patient. We know it means that we're going to take some risks, because for some of these projects, the business plan is new, and as Maha said just before, you have to try new approaches, so you need innovation. So it means we expect a return on investment, because we are a financial institution, but we place the impact at the heart of the discussion from the beginning. That's very important for us. Focus on some specific areas to finance. We think all sectors are really interesting, and we also think that it doesn't apply to one class of assets. I think everything can be useful, and so it means that we're going to be there from seed capital to capital development. The idea really is to support the project for long term. As Maha just said before, I think, and I'm going to refer to the principles of finance for tomorrow for the framework. Intentionality is very important from the beginning, because it means that you're going to finance a project and you know what the goal is. You know exactly where they want to go, and you know how they want to go there, and what impact they are looking for. For example, we support Alliance for Impact, and I think it's very important because we know from every project, we know what we want to achieve. So that's the principle of intentionality from the start is very important for us, because it's part of the discussion of why we're going to go and support a project. It also means that sometimes we want to focus, for example, our strategy is anchored in the sustainable development goals, and we have key priorities, for example, on climate change or on reducing inequalities. So it means sometimes the discussion on the investment thesis is going to be, we want to change a little bit, we want to make sure it fits to our strategy. The other principle that is key is additionality. It means you need to be able to dedicate some financing. And for example, on the social economy, we plan to allocate 300 million euros between 2021 and 2025. The other key issue is measurability. I'm going to be able to talk to you later about the tools we've developed. But I think it's key. You need to have from the start, and it's linked to intentionality, key performance indicators. Otherwise, you won't be able to know whether the impact was achieved. So all of these are quite new ways of doing things, but we really believe that it's part of the role as Banque des Territoires and Caisse des Dépôts to be there and to have these discussions with public and private actors, and to show that we are there, ready to be there for long term, and to be patient.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. You explain us, all the. You embed each time you are looking for an impact investment project. Did you develop some specific operating tools or framework? Because beside the intentionality, the additionality of impact, there is also a key element, which is a measurement. What is the social environmental return of the project you finance? Could you tell us the specific maybe framework or tools you put in place in order to make the process robust?
As I said, impact is at the heart of a strategy. So we have some sort of scoring tools that we developed in 2019 and 2020 on the whole investment portfolio on new flows. What we try to do is at the beginning, when we see the project, we try to assess the positive and negative impact on the social, environmental, and governance issues. And we try to measure them. So it means that we have developed a set of indicators that we try to assess. There's quantitative analysis and qualitative analysis. Of course, we finance very different sectors. So we have some, I would say, mainstream indicators, for example, the tons of emissions avoided or the impact on employment. But we have some specific indicators as well. For example, when we talk about renewable energies, we can try to measure the wind energy capacity that will be generated by investment. So now we've done that for the past year, a little bit more, on all new flows. This has helped us to try to set targets. We have our medium-term financing plans, that's anchored with our strategy, and now we try to put some targets, medium-term targets, and we try to set an annual path. That's part of the medium-term plan of the Caisse des Dépôts and of the Banque des Territoires. I can give you an example. We try to set some targets on social housing thermic renovation by 2024. Our target is to finance 200,000 renovation, and we try to put that into the context of the low carbon national strategy need. So we try to see how much we're going to be able to help, and in this area it might be around 1/3 of the need. We do that on some other issues. So that's very important for us because it's also a discussion with our governance to see what is our ambition, and that's we try to do that. We also do some other things. Is that we also do some evaluation. For example, we try to do ex-ante, itinerary, and ex-post evaluation. Very recently, we have done an evaluation on our environmental loans, the one for renovating social housing, because the product has been on the market for the past 10 years. So we were able to have a qualitative, even quantitative evaluation to say, okay, what has been the impact of these products? And we decided to make it public. We decided at the Banque des Territoires that it's part of transparency. It refers back to measuring the impact and be transparent about it. You can find the synthesis of this evaluation online. Other things is that we also, that the Caisse des Dépôts is issuing some bonds. In May 2021, we issued our third sustainable bond for 500 million euros for the 5 years. And we have a very specific annual report. You can really see all the projects that are behind this bond. You can see them on the map. You can see the description. You can see what were the targets, what's the impact. And for example, if we had some ambition on the labels for buildings, you see exactly what the labels are. So these are the whole set of things that we've developed. Of course, there are still areas of improvement, and we're still working on how to improve those things, because, for example, what I just told you is that we've been doing this scoring method on new flows. Now the issue is how do we do to analyze the whole portfolio? It's another thing because some of the investments are long time investment for us. We also want to use the dialogue with our counterparts. So we're going to issue a questionnaire on environmental, social, and governance issue with our counterparts to know what's going on, how are they doing on the project compared to the ambition we had together. And also, I think one other area of progress is how to assess negative externalities, because it's sometimes more difficult to assess that. But I think if you want to be transparent, you need to have a very comprehensive approach and comprehensive analysis. And also, one issue I think we need to put really on the forefront now is biodiversity. It's not always easy, and it's not just on biodiversity projects, but on all projects. You can see that there are usually biodiversity issues.
Thanks, Sarah. Maybe Maha, maybe you can give us also just elaborating on what Sarah said about the measurement, about the social impact contract, because it's really, measurement is really at the core, I would say, of the structuring and the designing of the product. So maybe it would be interesting that you tell us about how you operationally doing that.
Yes, sure. Indeed, in social impact contracts, impact is not a nice to have, it is a must have. Why? Because all the financial mechanics are indexed on the impact. It is the way that the social operator will measure its will take the risk on its reputation to be able to give the program. It's the risk on the investor who will only know how much he will get back from his capital and maybe from his interest. That is indexed on impact. So it's really, and also for the public authorities, because what is core in the social impact contract is that you measure the cost avoided for the society. When you put someone in employment, whereas he was unemployed, you make some savings for the society. It's like around 15,000 euros per person per year. When you avoid children placements on the program that I was telling before, you avoid like 60,000 euros per children per year. So there is a notion when you do preventing through a social impact contract, it is less costly globally for the society than when you do when you try to cure the problem after it occurs. And of course it's better also in terms of beneficiaries for their impact. So it is core, and there are some issues which we face for all impact measurement. It is, do we need to standardize versus do we need to do tailor-made? Do we need to have a simplicity versus professionalism and complexity? So those are issues that we face in social impact contracts, but I think it's something that we face for all impact measurement methodologies. How do we try to do it? By asking a few questions when we see a contract. What is the reference value you want to measure against? What is your benchmark? Do you have references? Do you have historical data? Do you have statistical data that are available? How can you try to get those statistical data talking for a program? How do you benchmark your KPIs? And if you don't have that, how do you build actually your KPIs? For example, there is one social impact contract that is just being signed today with Médecins du Monde. And they really go to the randomized control trial. You know what that is? It means that you have actually, the program is given to a certain number of beneficiaries and you have a control group who doesn't have the program and who matches exactly the specifics of the population, and you measure the progression of both groups, one who has the program and one who doesn't, and you hope that the one who gets the program has much better results in terms of impact than the ones who don't. So this is a way we can measure. On ADI, for example, we didn't have any statistical data, so we try to measure the length of the employment that is given through the program, meaning that if we think that the program is sustainable, we will measure how many people have actually still a job that were unemployed before the program, who still have a job at least 2 years after the program. So it means that we are achieving a very sustainable impact within the length. The length is very important in measurement. And so I think that we need today the social impact contract is interesting because it's also an experimentation of all evaluation tools. So we try to experiment at each contract, and maybe we will get some ideas to get further on. And just because there are so many impact methodologies that I think that there are people, so we need to make up our minds and try maybe to start small, but all together, and try to have something that is robust, but still experimentation going forward and try to get it better as we go forward and not try to have the perfect tool from the beginning, because I think we'll still be there in like 100 years.
Thanks, Mark. It's quite fascinating, and you just show us that measuring the net impact is not an easy task. It requires a lot of resource, a very strict and robust process, so thank you. You also told about necessity of some standard or in terms of maybe metrics or in terms of framework. I would like to ask Nicolas about that. Do you agree on the necessity maybe to have more common standards, especially at the European level, like we have, for instance, on the green taxonomy? There are also some discussion around the launch of a social taxonomy. I assume it would be maybe more difficult to put in place. What's your view about that? Do you agree on the necessity to put all this process and to put in place more standard for impact in order to scale up?
Sure, I think it's really fundamental to measure the impact. That's how we're going to make this industry grow, and it's really, really key. Just maybe a few words, not to create any confusion, about what's the difference between SRI and impact investing, because maybe it's not really clear, like through the different conversation that we're having and that we had. SRI and ESG criteria are not the same than impact investing and investing in social and environmental startups. It's two different things. SRI is about investing in companies. Maybe I'm gonna be a bit, harsh, but SRI is investing through criteria in companies that their main goal is to make profit, but at the same time, they would like to contribute to the millennial goals, and they would like to have an impact. But their main goal is to make profit. So when you do an investment, you invest in companies that make the world less worse, I would say. While investing in impact companies, in impact investing, is investing in companies that their main criteria is not only to make profit. It's of course to have an economic model that is sustainable, but at the same time they try to tackle the major social and environmental issues that we're facing right now. So these organizations are organizations that try to make the world better. So that's a big difference. So you have SRI and ESG, and I think it's really great, and it's developing, and Europe is pretty leading in this sector, and it's good because it's going the right direction. But what we try to achieve through impact investing is to go further and invent some economic models that really are able to tackle the major issues that we're facing and that are solutions to the big problems that we have. And the first big problem, we have different, but like that, let's say 3 big problems. The first one is environment, of course. The second one is social inequalities that are growing in lots of countries. And the third one is a demographic kind of issue, meaning that we're 7 billion right now and we're going to be 10 billion in the next 25 years. So we need to address that as well. So at the European level, of course, we're thinking, and there are lots of people, and the European Commission is thinking on and is pushing hard on the environmental side and on the green taxonomy, because it's also, and we've heard that through the French minister this morning, that say that, of course, there are some exemptions that can be made while it's environment, and because, like, it's a pressing and it's a big issue right now, and we need to find solution, and the financial markets and the financial world needs to address that as well and need to take its part for tackling that. So for that, there are lots of things that are going on, and I think that at the European level, it's pretty impressive how also through the different funds that they're launching, they really want to go to this direction. So that's good. But then there's the social part. And of course, and you said it's real. So there's a discussion at the European level on how you can implement and develop more social economy, and also to create maybe a social taxonomy for that. And that's key. Why? Because sustainability, when we're all talking about sustainability has 2 legs. It's the environmental one, but it's also the social one. You won't be able to tackle environmental issues if you're not working on inequalities, and it's the same on the other way. Because lots of the people that are struggling right now and that are facing poverty are people that also have facing directly also the environmental changes that we're seeing right now. So we're working on that, but it's complicated. Why is it complicated? Because at the European level and all the different states and the member states of the European Union, in the core of the philosophy of Europe and the European Union, I mean, the social part is not a big part, unfortunately. And we also need to reframe that, and I think to work on that, to make the social agenda on top of the global European agenda. So of course now green taxonomy is growing more and more, and there are some solutions. We're working on some social one, but for that you need to have unanimously the 27 countries that agree on the fact that it's important also to work socially. And Europe is based on competition. That's the core value of the European construction. And the social part is not the main priority right now. So I think we need to rebuild also the European project more globally, to rethink it, because there are things that the world is changing a lot, so the European Union as an institution also needs to change, and the social part needs to be in the center of the conversation, as we've achieved and we've made it through the last 5 to 10 years on the environmental side. We're working on it, but we need to be a majority to be able to really make it happen.
Pauliina, you already described, what you're doing at the World Benchmarking Alliance, that you have already ranked companies, corporate in different sectors. Could you give us some example in terms of metrics or frameworks? A difficulty maybe when discussing with the international corporate to align everybody on the same standards, and maybe a word on the collaboration partnership you have with ADEME, especially regarding the methodology of evaluating the climate impact on the companies.
Absolutely, thank you. Yeah, we've been really privileged to take a best-in-class framework, the ACT framework, and to work with the DEM, so thank you very much. It's a rigorous assessment of companies on their energy and decarbonisation transition, and it's ambitious, so it's not easy. But it also looks at if we, and I really like what was just said about the difficulty of agreeing on the social issues, and I'll talk a bit about the just transition as well. But it's really, if we look at governments are not going to move very fast, there are lots of negotiations to try to agree some level of baseline internationally. But so we do need to rely on voluntary change to go to a 1.5 degree scenario, and for that we've been working with the DEM. And it's looking at the willingness and the ability, both from a qualitative and a quantitative perspective, of companies, the most carbon-intensive economic sectors. So we look at their companies' climate strategies, their business model, their investments, their operations, and then their GHG emissions management. And if, as financiers, as investors, if these are the topics that you can pick up with the companies that you're investing in and thinking about the transition that they are going to, then that's our invitation really to look at the methodology, that framework. It's a toolkit for you when you have the dialogue with these carbon-intense sectors. And just to give you, and I also get lots of questions about, okay, but that's another framework, there's lots of reporting, which framework should we use? There's just lots of initiatives. So we're really aware of that, and working with the DEM, using ACT, that's already taking a best-in-class framework. But then we also look at GRI standards and IIRC reporting framework. We look at SASB standards. We look at ARISTA 3.0 and the GHG protocol principles. We build on the CDP disclosure principles. And finally, we're also trying to look at convergence with TCFD, because we really understand that there's lots of frameworks. So how can we ask companies not 101 questions, but the critical ones. So that's really kind of giving a picture of how we try to do it in practice. The results of that, and I'll give you a quick snapshot. We ranked 100 companies in the oil and gas sector, and it was the first time that we've used the 1.5 scenario, the IEA's net zero by 2050 scenario. So it's harsh, and it looks at scopes 1, 2, and 3. The top company got 57%, it's Neste, and the second came at 56%, and the third 44%. So these are quite low scores, so we've got a lot to do. So again, my invitation and my plea really is for you as finance, use your leverage with these companies and look at those pillars that I noted. And then I don't know if I'll have time at the end, so I'm going to quickly go to it now. But the just transition.
Very quick.
So we use the ACT framework to look at the decarbonisation transition, but we need to then put the social lens on top of it, and that's the just transition. And their governments are as behind, we're all struggling to understand what does that mean. So we need to radically collaborate together.
Thank you, Pauliina. Florent, we are running out of time, so I'm sorry, we have 5 minutes left. So maybe you can give us your view about, very quickly about metrics and much above that, what are the main change you're calling for in order to do much more now in terms of scaling up? What's your proposal for accelerating? In a very, very short.
Yes. Okay, so in France, local authorities represent 2/3 of the public investment, and we think that the transition will require a significant increase in those public investments. So in order to fully comply with the national low carbon strategy, we estimate that, for instance, local authorities should invest an additional amount of 15 billion per year. It's an increase by 30%, which is very significant. In comparison with this highly ambitious long-term potential, the current production of green loans appears to be still pretty modest. Since the launch of a green program, the green production has represented 10% of local authorities' investment. So we think that there is definitely a room for improvement. Today, the limitation factor is not on the funding side. We could issue much more green bonds. For instance, our last green issuance received a demand 5 times as high as the amount issued. But the main limitation factor is currently the lack of green projects. So in order to boost the green and sustainable investment of local authorities, we will work on several axes. First, we made the decision to intensify the dialogue with our clients on the existing green framework. We need to convince them that it is in their interest to invest as early as possible to adapt to climate change transition. Then we also think about the possibility to complement our offer of thematic financing by launching a new program of social loans for local authorities in 2022. The idea is to finance the social investments, for example, in the field of education or culture. French local authorities will play a major role in the transition to a more sustainable future. Last year, we committed to financing 1 billion of green loans to local authorities and 1 billion of social loans to public hospitals each year, and we strongly reaffirm this commitment. SFIL is ready to increase its capacity in the green and social bond markets to make sure that long-dated financing at competitive conditions are available for sustainable investments.
Thank you, Florent. Sarah, give you the floor. What are in 1 minute, I know it's quite challenging, what would be the key drivers of change? What do you propose or recommend in order to accelerate?
First of all, in our case, we are ready to mobilize for a substantial amount of financing. We've announced last year the climate plan of 40 billion with BPI for climate, to finance transition, renewable energies and modernization. But also it means that we need to finance new types of contracts with the impact funds. It's new, but we've been engaged since the launch of this new financing products as far as we are concerned. It means having a different analysis of risk and being able to take those risks. But as I said before, I think it's necessary. And I hope that the fact that we are present and committed shows that other investors can also come and join the game. I also share what just has been said. Sometimes there is some financing, but our clients or counterparts, they need some time to build a strategy, because sometimes we have the financing and the projects are not there. So we also have the same issue of talking to our clients, our counterparts, to local authorities to see what do you need, and sometimes they need some advice, and they need to share experience, and they need to see what others have done, and that's very important for us to do that. And I think everybody has a role to play with that, to share, what are the best practices, what has been working, not working, and then we're here to say, okay, we're here to finance your projects.
Maha, same question for you.
Yes. Maybe I'll just take what we're doing in works in the G7 Impact Task Force currently, and there are three main factors that were identified, which is impact integrity. So integrity passes through maybe better accounting services, because today what made the world work from the financial point of view is accounting, regulation and everything, and today for impact we do not have that. So maybe I can state a very interesting initiative which is called Impact Weighted Assets, that is currently being put forward by the Harvard University to try to translate what was done from a risk and accounting perspective to what can be done towards impact for more integrity. There is harmonization, so can we have a common baseline to work all together? Because if it's not harmonized, we cannot speak the same language, and for that maybe the regulator can have a nice place. I know it's too much regulation is not so good, but through regulation, we still try to achieve things, and at least we have the same standards, which is set for everyone, and then we build on from that. It's getting better and everything, but then the regulation should work, of course, with practitioners so that it's operable. We also need data. This is very important in the impact field. And everything around regulation, because today the regulation is not adapted to impact. I would maybe give two examples. Simple, normal people cannot invest in impact because it's supposed to be too risky unless they have a specific funds. All the financing that are long-term are very much penalized by the regulations, and whereas the long term should be the one that is patient and more impactful, and investing in startup, it's still considered too risky too. So there is not yet a good communication between the regulators and the practitioners.
Thanks, Maha. Pauliina, what would be your key recommendations?
So we've been working with a few investors already on the just transition as part here with Finance for Tomorrow. And it's incredibly helpful for us to understand where that dialogue is going. So my request is what I said before, for investors to continue to form alliances with the rest of society, whether it's labor unions, business platforms, civil society organizations, governments, and then vice versa. They need to learn, we need to learn how to work better with you.
Nicolas?
I think everything needs to be changed. The whole philosophy about investing, about what's the creating value and so on, the mindset, the total mindset of the finance world, but also of the global economy needs to be changed, because otherwise I think we're going to really struggle. So I would start with something that actually for me is really important. We had the privilege to have the French minister this morning with us. I would for me, the tax issue is absolutely key, and I would change it drastically in making a different tax level depending on the impact that you have. For me, all the companies are paying a 25% of tax, whether they're like whether they're impactful or not impactful or so on. I would differentiate that and really work on how to measure, and also at the public level to give tax cuts to the companies that really have a strong impact, to change the taxonomy on the companies that the one that have good impact shouldn't pay the same amount. They should pay, I don't know, 5%, and maybe the one that have a worse impact should pay 30 or 35%, and work on something like that, because we need to have a big shift in the way we see how we create value, how we tax that, and where people want to invest. And if we had, because when you're an impact fund, you have the same tax cuts than other funds that are not impact investing funds. So there are no specificities for doing that, and I don't think it's normal. I think we should, as a global community and a global society, rethink about our system, and taxation is absolutely key for that for me.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you all here, and thank you, Sarah, for your views. We could have spent more time together. Also, thank you for all the strong messages given to the audience and the public in order to scale up and to accelerate regarding impact strategy, impact financing. Maybe there is a key message I have in mind. It's about the way that we speak the same language. All of you have stressed that it is important that the notion of the definition of impact be shared together, so that we can accelerate and base and on this solid foundation. And I just wanted to re-express the fact that the French Impact Task Force, led by Finance for Tomorrow, as you all know, has published a common definition of the impact financing. And now we are in the moment when we want this definition to live, to develop, to gain momentum. And so I call all the players, the actors, asset manager, entrepreneur, to join this definition, to sign the pledge which will support this definition. So please. Okay, thank you, everybody. Thank you.